You're listening to the Confidence Within podcast. If you are a successful professional entrepreneur who is nonetheless struggling with the fear of public speaking, then you are in the right place. This podcast is all about igniting your inner confidence, learning to show up with genuine authority and brilliance, and becoming the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Victoria Lesnyansky, and welcome to my show. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Confidence Within podcast. My guest today is Dr. Carol Parker Walsh. Carol and I met a couple of years ago at a business mastermind, and I was instantly impressed by her depth of knowledge, expertise, and wisdom. Carol is an executive and leadership coach, helping her clients showcase their brilliance and design an epic career and life that matters. She is an award-winning certified career and personal brand strategist, a TEDx presenter, 3 times Amazon best-selling author, member of Forbes Coaches Council, Newsweek Expert Forum, Harvard Business Review Advisory Council, and Entrepreneurs Leadership Network. She also is a resident career expert on ABC's AM Northwest Morning Show. Carol leverages her law degree and PhD, along with multiple certifications from Harvard, Oxford, and Dartmouth, along with her almost 30 years of experience as an attorney, executive leader, professor, dean, and social scientist, to help professionals and entrepreneurs elevate their income and amplify their confidence, expertise, and authority. And this is not all. Carol has been the go-to coach for Grammy Award winners, Paralympic gold medalists, and Fortune 500 leaders. Her consulting company, Carol Parker Walsh Consulting, was awarded the 2021 Impact Company of the Year award. Her podcast, The Midlife Career Rebel, was named one of Mac's list top career podcasts for 2022. And now, please welcome Dr. Carol Parker Walsh to my show. Carol, I am so happy that you are my guest on the podcast. I am so much looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you. Anytime we're together, Victoria, it's always a fun time.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're so wonderful, and I already introduced you to my audience. I'm sure they're blown away by everything that you've done. However, I kept one thing that I didn't mention in the bio because I want to talk about it right now. I want to start with it, and that's a fun thing.
Okay.
You studied in the Chicago Conservatory of Music, and you are a trained opera singer. So how on earth did you make the transition from being an opera singer and studying in the conservatory to everything else that you've done in your life?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I think it was because, which I think impacts a lot of the things that I do now, is that I didn't have the full level of confidence in myself to really pursue it. And I didn't have also the confidence and full backing of my family to do it. So at the time that I was studying, I studied through the end of my high school year and early college. And I was, paying for it on my own. I was, had some small parts locally that I sang in. But I think I was good, but I wasn't like great. I just had it in my mind that I don't think this is something that I could do. But it's funny, like since then I always sang in like the church choir. Like I just didn't have that belief system in myself to really go after it. And I think that's why I didn't. So I ended up, going to law school.
Right. And the truth is, Carol, I know that even though maybe that was your dream and maybe there is a little bit tinge of regret there, I know there are thousands of people in this world who are eternally grateful that you decided not to pursue music, but actually pursued your career.
Yes. And actually, I'm happy I did too. I mean, I think I've had a wonderful career and I think I'm doing what I'm meant to do. It's interesting that I've always been someone who was comfortable on stages and comfortable in front of people. Even when I was in grammar school, I was always the one that was picked to present to the school assembly or something. I think there's just something that I inherently had, that I was able to just be in front of people and feel like, hey, let's connect. And so even though I'm not singing arias on the stage, I do a lot of speaking, and I do connect to people and talk to people and do a lot of training and motivation and inspiration. So I think, to your point, I am doing what I'm meant to be doing, as opposed to entertaining, is to really helping to impact and change lives. So, I think in a lot of ways I'm singing a different kind of message than, I would have been had I stayed in music.
And speaking about inspiring people, can you talk to us about deciding to do this major pivot in your life? You were incredibly successful as a lawyer. You were
Mm-hmm.
incredibly successful as a professor, as a dean, as a leader. You've had such an amazing corporate career, and then you decide to make this huge pivot and you
Mm-hmm.
start your own business. And you
Yeah.
didn't start it in your 20s or 30s. You started it when you were already so mature, so experienced. And a lot of people at that time, I don't think a lot of people switch. They
No.
just stay in their career. And that's why it's so interesting to me. How did you make that transition? Why did you make this transition?
Yeah, and it's funny. I remember at the time that I made the transition, my son was about to graduate from high school to go to college, and I had a daughter behind him who was a freshman or a sophomore in high school at the time. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm walking away from, a really kind of lucrative salary and, a great position. And, I'm wondering, right when I have college bills to come up with. So is that the most practical thing? And I remember, actually, when I started my business, my daughter asked me if we were going to be poor now. So so luckily that wasn't the case. But the reason that I made the pivot at the time, it was on the precipice of my turning 50. There was a lot of things that kind of led up to it. And about 4 years before that, I was in a massive car accident where a drunk driver hit me. And had he hit me head on, I wouldn't be here. So he hit me on the passenger side and kind of broke everything on the right side of my body. And the thing that saved me in the moment when I was in the car, because it was a 2-lane road and there really wasn't anywhere to go, was I heard a voice that said, "Turn now." Right. I heard it as if it was like somebody was in the car yelling at me to turn now. And I made the turn, and, I still got hit, but I wasn't hit head on, which would have killed me, because there was all the accident. I mean, I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. I, had multiple surgeries. So it was a pretty traumatic experience. But the thing that had been resonating in my mind since that accident was this idea of turning now, right? Like making a pivot, of moving out. And it started resonating in, do I really love what I'm doing? Is this the best use of my skills? Am I making the impact that I want to make in the world? Like, all of those questions were emerging for me. And as I said, on the precipice of my 50th birthday, it became a little bit louder. And I decided to make the leap and make the pivot, because what I wanted to do was to really connect to and help people figure out, their pathway and what they want to do. Life is so short through that experience that I had. And I think it's so important that we listen to that internal voice is telling us, do this, you're meant to do this, you should do this. And I even think back, harking back to the question you asked me earlier about, not following a career in music because of not believing and not seeing the vision, and not being surrounded by people who can really support your vision. And so for me, I made that pivot at 50 because I felt like, if not now, when? Right? If not, the voice within me that was saying, no, go after your dream, became louder and louder and louder, that I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I did. I decided to leave my job and to hang out my shingle, and I haven't looked back since then.
You're literally giving me goosebumps. Turn now. This is, and this is, you think, literally what you're teaching clients in your programs.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many people, there is a category of people that stay in the job they don't love because of security, because, retirement is on the horizon, millions of reasons. Then there are people who know they want to quit, but they just don't have that sense of confidence. They have a lot of fear around quitting. And then there are people who are loving being in this corporate environment, but at the same time, they know they're meant for more. They want to get promoted and they just can't. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're working with all of these categories of people, helping them see how they can become the better version of that.
Yeah. And I think and I specifically work with people who are kind of at that midlife pivot, right? They're in that space because that's the time when we start to, we start looking at our legacy, we start looking at the things that we've done, and we start looking back and asking questions about, how have I spent my life? Am I really where I want to be? And I think what fundamentally happens is that, when we're in our 20s, we're given that roadmap, go to school, get the job, stay there until you retire, like promote, climb that ladder, make that money. Like that is the plan. And I think so many of us just follow it blindly because societally, that's what we should do. That's the sign of success if we do that. And so we do it so blindly that we're on automatic pilot in a lot of ways, following it. And then at some place, I think in midlife actually, is when all of a sudden we kind of snap out of it and we look around and we wonder, like, how did I get here? Or why am I here? Because we never really took the time to ask the question, what do I want? What impact do I want to make? Where do I see myself, in my future? Right. Because in midlife, we're not only probably caring for aging parents, we're also caring for another generation behind us. And a lot of our focus is how can we help our kids, realize their dreams. So we put so much of our time and emphasis on other people that we don't even think about ourselves and what we want in our careers. And then by the time we do reach midlife, most of us have achieved a level of success or an income that's paying the mortgage, funding the 401k, that's putting money away for college tuitions, like on and on and on. And so then it almost feels impossible or impractical or even irresponsible to say that I'm going to shake all of that up and then focus on myself because, society tells you your time is up. You had your time. So just kind of sit back and glide through into retirement while you're taking care of everything and everyone else. And I think that's a big reason why people feel stuck and trapped, because that is their mindset. And so they've just been, because society says that there's one pathway to success, and for you to buck it, which is why, I use rebel in the name of my program, it almost requires an act of rebellion to say, no, I'm going to focus on what I want. I'm going to focus on the impact that I want to make in the world, that I want to leave a legacy. I want to, change the life of school teachers or impact the pharmaceutical community or change the way we think about accounting or whatever the dream that someone may have that they know they can do because they have all of this wealth of experience and knowledge and background. And so it really is about shifting the way we think and deciding to prioritize ourselves for a change and breaking free from our professional identity to rediscovering our personal identity so that we could go after the things that we want to go after.
This is resonating with me so much because I have made so many pivots in my own life. I've been an entrepreneur on and off for the last 20 years. And I also built corporate career at various private companies and government agencies. And I remember my last corporate stint was at a large organization where I was managing all software development. And I was just terrified that this is where I'm going to stay for a few more years. I was so done with being in the corporate. I so wanted to build a business again because I was an entrepreneur before and I wanted to start a different company. And I was literally a couple of years away from having a retirement plan kick in completely. And I basically said, I don't care. I don't care. I'm leaving now. I am starting the company that I want because this is my life. I can no longer put it on hold for one more day. And I know not everybody has the flexibility and luxury of doing it, obviously, because of, I
Yeah.
wasn't a single person working in my family. My husband was able to support us while I was doing that
Right.
transition. But I think it's so important what you said is to listen to yourself and put
Hmm.
yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a way that our life makes sense.
Yeah, that I mean what you said is so important because I think the other thing that gets in people's mind is that they think to go after what they want means they have to quit their job, leave everything behind and go after their dream. And for some people that makes perfect sense, right? I mean, you did it. Actually, that's what I did. I just like said that's it. I'm out. I'm going to do this. This is my time. But what I often tell people is that what you want to do is build a bridge from where you are now to where you want to go. So if you know what, it's time for me to make a shift, then build a plan, build the bridge from where you are now to when it's time for you to walk away. So maybe what you could start doing is volunteering in the area, start doing some part-time consulting or volunteering in an area that you see yourself doing, once that time comes, or, making sure you start to sock away money. So maybe you start changing your lifestyle a little bit. So you're saving more money and really funding that 401k, or maybe you pay a little bit more on the mortgage so you can pay that down, or, maybe you skip a couple of vacations so the kids are settled in terms of their college funds. So I think the idea of it, people think that they have to either keep their job or leave their job. And it's not that finite. And I always suggest just build a bridge. And in the process of building the bridge, you start developing the confidence and creating the security you need around yourself so that you can make the move and the pivot into whatever that next step is for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is actually what I did myself. I didn't quit just, oh, today I decided I want to start a business and I'm done. And next day I give a notice. No, of course not. I wanted to make sure that I do build a bridge. Exactly. I didn't call it a bridge, but that was the idea. I purchased a franchise that I was going to be building from ground zero in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And when I purchased the franchise, I realized, okay, I need to do a lot of preparation for me to even open the franchise. And so I was still working full time. And every lunch hour, I would go outside to my car. My car was parked at front, and I would go to my car, lock the door, and I would spend the whole lunch hour making sales calls.
Wow.
Every single lunch hour, every single day, sales calls. I was hiring, I was doing interviews. I was doing all of that in that 1 hour. And then every evening, I would be on my computer working
Mm,
on setting up my company. And when I knew the opening date of my franchise, that's when I gave the notice. So then I was
yeah.
only 2 weeks away from opening the franchise. And I did start making money pretty much immediately with that franchise. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up building it to number one nutty scientist franchise in the United States, actually in
Wow.
North America.
Yeah.
And then I had to close it because of COVID, and no regrets. I've done
Yeah.
everything I wanted to do with that company, and that was time for me to move on. But
Right.
at the same time, I completely agree with you. You do want to have a plan. You do want to have a way to step from, if you want to start a business, let's say, to step away from your job into your business and create a bridge so that the transition is smooth.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
about people who feel they're not entrepreneurs, they don't want to start a business, but they do feel unfulfilled in that current environment, current job. They
Mm,
want
mm-hmm.
to maybe stay within the industry, but get a better job. What advice would you give those people?
Yeah, that's a really great question because I think it's similar in that they need to take the time to figure out what they really want to do next, to ask the question. It's fascinating to me that often when I ask people the question, tell me what it is that you want to do, right? They know they want to make a pivot, they know they want something different, they know where they are right now isn't where they want to be, But when I ask, so tell me what it is that you think you want to go into next, they are like, I have no idea. Right. And they may have some ideas or thoughts or things that are floating in their mind, but they're not really clear. So, similarly to what we talked about in terms of building the bridge from where you are to where you want to go, you want to do the same thing in figuring out what is your next move. And the way I often tell people to do that is to really get clear on what is it that they love, what is it that they don't love, and where can they see themselves kind of doing that work, right? If they had to vision getting up in the morning and going in to do something, like what would that look like? And really spending some time getting clear on what that is, right? Because we too often focus in on, well, I have this degree and I have this experience, therefore, these are the only things I can do. But what you really want to do is to go a level deep, right? That's surface level. You have a degree in something and you've been doing this job for 15 years. But what other skills have you developed along the way, right? What's your innate zone of genius that you may not be doing in that job that you need to bring to the table, right? An example of that would be, like I said, even though I was singing when I was studying opera, what the fundamental underlying skill of that is that I'm good on stages. I'm good at speaking to groups of people. So that's a skill that I have to be able to show up in front of a lot of people and be able to carry a message. And I could look on the surface and say, well, I studied singing, so that's all that I can do. But what you have to do is look at your skills, look at your experience, look at your education, look at your interest, look at your personality, right? Look at those innate zones of genius that you have and go a level deep below the surface so that you can really get a handle on the breadth and depth of what it is that you can possibly offer to the world. And once you look at that, then all of a sudden, what may have felt like blinders that I can only do this because of this degree and this education, all of a sudden expands to so many other possibilities that could be available to you. And I also think, to be honest, that a lot of times people do kind of know what they want to do, but they're afraid. They're afraid that it sounds so different or it doesn't sound as lofty as maybe what they're doing right now, or it sounds impossible. And so they kind of tuck it away as something that they can't do. Like an example, I had a client who her dream, the way she framed it was that I want to spend rich people's money. Right. Now, of course, when you put it that way, that sounds completely impossible. But when we really looked at it at a deeper level and asked the questions like, well, why? What is it about that? Like, what do you mean by that? What she really wanted to do was to help people who are wealthy to spend their money in responsible and socially responsible ways. That she wanted to help them to think about ways in which they could contribute to the community or foundations or to the betterment of humanity. And I said, well, do you know that so many rich people have philanthropic directors and people who are on their staff to help them donate to foundations and where that should go? They don't know where these possible social responsible organizations are. They may have an idea, but you may be able to do some research and help them find really awesome opportunities that they can invest their money and make a difference. And so when we kind of took it out of this fantasy way of like, I just want to spend rich people's money and really thought about it from the level of, oh, I can really help be a director of philanthropy for XYZ person, then it became a possibility for her, right? When she saw that, I've done this work before. I've done fundraisers. I've been in, philanthropic work before. And I'm in an industry where I actually have contact and connections where I can reach people who are pretty well off. And once she started doing that mining and digging into her skills, her interest, her background, her education, all of that stuff, then it started becoming more of a reality than a fantasy. And now, like, we're working together on that now. So now she's on her way to making contacts and communication to be able to do that work, to actually transition from what she was doing to actually do something that she really dreams and believes is possible for herself.
Very interesting. And you also mentioned education. And so I'm curious, well, in this specific case of this client, I don't think education is applicable, but do you think it's ever absolutely necessary to go back to school, even when you are in your midlife, to go back to school and get additional education? And I know it's a fun topic for you and me because both of us are just a little bit overeducated. You a lot more than me, I have to say. You have
Yes,
so many
yes.
degrees, and I am a week away from getting my second master's. I'm getting master in communications and digital media, which I absolutely don't need. It just happened that I'm getting it. Is it really necessary for people to go back to school for a degree, or you feel that may not be the case?
I would say almost 90% of the time it's not necessary to go back. And the only caveat, the only 10% I'm saying is that if you want to be a doctor and you're not, you need to go to school. Like they're the obvious ones that require additional training and certification for you to move into that field, right? I've known friends in the past who were teachers and wanted to be doctors. Well, of course you have to go to medical school for that. But on the whole, usually you do not need another degree. Like I said, if you start going deep and start mining all of your experience and even the degree that you have, and maybe what did you learn through that process, and knowing how to leverage your past experience and your past education or certifications and things of that nature, most of the time you do not need a degree. But we've been trained to think that we do. And a lot of times we don't have the confidence in what we bring to the table. So we think the degree will give us the confidence and the credibility to go after that new job or that new role. But the truth is, the credibility lies within yourself. Because if you know your genius and you know what you have to offer, if you've had experience managing a team, well, you know how to influence people, you know how to multitask, you know how to communicate effectively, you know how to set priorities, you know how to manage a budget. Like there's a lot of skills that you have in that are translatable, that can go into something different. And so that's the thing that I always recommend, is to stop looking at the surface level and start going deeper, so you can see that you probably are qualified to do so many more things than you give yourself credit for, right? I have another client that I'm working with who's coming out of academia and is going to work in a nonprofit organization. And she was worried that she has no nonprofit background, but I'm like, they're not hiring you because, or they're not looking at you because of the nonprofit or lack of nonprofit ability. They're looking at you because you have experience in research, in grant writing, in funding. That's what they're looking for. So that's what you lean into. The nonprofit stuff you could learn on the job. You could figure that out along the way. But really look at what are people looking for and want, and then go deep into what you have to offer to see how you map that or how you meet that, right? So honestly, most people do not need a degree. We've been trained to think that we do, but we don't. Now, you and I are lifelong learners. So like I may get a degree just because it's fun, just because I want to learn something, right? But it's not because I need it, right? It's not because even my PhD, I got my PhD because it was a time in my life where I was curious to research and study a certain topic. I always tell people it was more therapy than it was education. And it was ideal for me, but it wasn't because I needed a PhD. And so I never tell people or advise people, like, if you want to get another degree, fine, but just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not because you think you have to, but just because you want to and you're interested in the topic.
Right. And I love that you mentioned being a lifelong learner, because it's not about formal education. It's
Right.
about always creating the better version of you. Every
Yes.
single day, you're trying to do something that's going to make you a better human being, a better professional, a more knowledgeable professional, a more confident professional. Like, for example, that's
Yes.
why people come to me to learn how to overcome their fear of public speaking and become really effective communicators, because they're just trying to become a better version of themselves so that they can raise up to a better
Yes.
career, to a better job, or start a completely different business. So when we talk about maybe that formal education may not be necessary, we're talking about formal. I do believe that if you feel that there is an area of improvement, or if you just feel like you want to learn something, you should absolutely go for it.
Yeah, now that I totally agree with. I mean, look at where we are post-pandemic. The world has turned upside down. There's so many things that are different. We have AI and technology and we have wellness and mental health issues. There's so many things that are at play right now that what you may have learned 5 years ago, it may not even be applicable today. So I am a big advocate of continual education, right? In whatever form that is, to stay updated, to stay current, and to stay just knowledgeable about what's happening in the world. So yeah, I'm a big fan of, involving yourself in, classes or online webinars or certification programs or anything that will continue to advance your knowledge and keep you current. But just know why you're doing it. Don't do it because you think it's going to bolster your confidence. Do it because you really wanting to advance yourself.
Right. And because you mentioned what's happening in the world, I started thinking about something else. What advice would you give people who are thinking of changing jobs, advancing their careers, or maybe going into business when there is always this fear of recession, what may happen in the world? How do you advise your clients in relation to all of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there was I think I was sitting in a session, a class or something, and someone made it, or maybe I was reading this, I don't remember, but somebody was saying that during every recession that has happened from the Depression, the Great Depression in the 30s, all the way through, that a business was started that has become excessively successful. Like I think, for example, during one recession, Airbnb was founded, right? And now look at Airbnb today. I think someone was saying something like in 1932 during the Depression, it was something like I think Kleenex was founded or something like it was some company that we still are operating under. So a recession is not a reason not to go after your dreams. It may be a smart thing to make sure you're padding a security and you have some backup funding, for whatever reason, but it should never be the thing that stops you from going after what you want to go after. I think I need to find that reference or that resource because I think it was the most incredible thing I ever read that during every down economic turn in this country, a one or two or three businesses were founded that are still to this day very, very successful. So that just lets you know a recession shouldn't stop you from going after what you want.
I love this. I love this. I love this inspiration. I really do love it. So speaking about clients who are stuck in their jobs, who feel stuck in their jobs, they may not be stuck, but they do feel that they're stuck. I know that you do have a step-by-step process because you're very organized of helping your clients get unstuck. So would you mind sharing this process with us?
Yeah, no problem. I use what I call the fearless framework to really help individuals to fearlessly go after what it is that they want in their career. And there are three aspects of it that are critical, which is the first one is to appraise your value. That helps you to really go from thinking what's impossible to what's possible for you in your career. The second one is to really amplify your brilliance and your knowledge so that you go from obscurity to becoming really a sought after thought leader in your industry. And the final one is really activating, which is creating a plan or a strategy that allows you to advance in prosperity in what you're doing. And with each of those three pillars of the framework, there's work that we do in each individual one that really helps to advance that. And the appraise your value really starts with, I mentioned earlier, about really understanding, like kind of doing that mining into what it is that you bring to the table, taking you a little bit deeper in understanding not only the genius and brilliance that you bring and can contribute and deliver the results that you deliver to whatever organization that you want to be a part of if you're pivoting in an organization, or even to your clients if you're starting an entrepreneurial venture, but how also to elevate your dream and to really get clear about what it is that you want to step into next, right? So that really helps you to kind of really clear the lens, if you will, around what it is that you want to move into next. And then the next piece around amplify it's kind of like if you think about if, what's the saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it really fall kind of thing? Well, amplify is the same kind of process, right? And so it's about how do you establish a language and a message around your brilliance that you offer to organizations or to clients. How do you create the messaging that allows people to know where to find you, right? How do you talk about what you can offer? How do you talk about the results that you deliver? How do you talk about the way that you can contribute to the bottom line or change the ROI or advance an organization or help a client, be better at whatever it is that they've come to you for, right? How can they find you, and how do you find the language to be able to communicate that? And that's what we do in Amplify. And then activate is how do you really create systems of freedom and a systems of support so that you can continue to elevate and continue on the journey of building and advancing wherever that next leg of your journey is going to take you, right? So in there, we talk about how to negotiate, how to estimate your value, and then also how to create, as I said, these systems of freedom. And from that, I mean, how do you create a system of self-care and ability to continue to prioritize yourself and prioritize what you want while you're also giving back to so many other people around you? And so that's the process that we take people through using those three core pillars of appraise, amplify, and activate, to be able to get them to the other side, to get unstuck, to really step into powerfully into what they want to be able to do in their career.
Yeah, I can definitely see how you're changing so many lives. And I can also see how you want to facilitate. I do feel it's very hard to do this work on your own. I find it so hard. Anytime I'm working with clients, I find it so hard that when they have to look deep inside themselves and praise themselves and try to find their strengths. Now, if I ask somebody to find their weaknesses, the list goes on and on.
Yes.
But when you ask someone to find their strength and what makes them great, do you find the same thing, that it's a lot harder? It's a lot harder for people.
It's very hard. It's very hard because, you think about our society is designed to always point out your failures so you can get better, right? You even think about educational institutions, right? They point out, nope, that was wrong, so you can hopefully improve. But not very often do they come and say, you're great. This is, I think other school systems may do that, but it's not a lot of focus on what you're doing well for you to kind of continue to iterate in that process of doing well. And I think that's why it's hard for us to focus on what we do well. We're so used to looking at, what we don't do well. But you're right. It is, part of the challenge is really helping to shift the framework around how we think about ourselves and what we think about what we have to deliver. A lot of people, that's why I call it fearless, right? Because it's fearlessly being able to claim what it is that you bring to the table. And I think all of us have something amazing to offer the world, but we just haven't taken the time to figure out what that is and positioned ourselves to really go after it and state it in the world. And so that's a big, I talk about in my work that it's the inner and outer game strategy, right? That is, we have the outer game tactics, but the inner game of the mindset, the confidence, and really being able to articulate what's great about what you do can be really challenging. And it's also why I do this program in community, right? I'm doing it with other people together so that they can see that they're not alone, that they can be supported, uplifted, they can share wins and experiences, that other people can see things that maybe they don't see that are great and fabulous, that they can then celebrate that in a community of other people. And so I find that in and of itself, the community in and of itself can be really powerful to reinforce what the greatness that you bring to the table that you may not be able to see even within yourself.
Yes, very true. So true. And I am sure my audience right now wants to know how they get to know you better and where they can learn more about you.
Yeah, so I would say the best place to start is at my website. So if you go to www.carolparkerwalsh.com, that will let you know a little bit about me, and it will give you links to my social media, to my podcast, and even to how to work together if there's an interest in that. And actually, my Fearless Academy, the program, is starting enrollment soon. So this is a great time if you're interested to learn more about it and have a conversation with me about it.
Wonderful. And can you also talk about your podcast? I'm sure that my audience will be interested in your podcast as well.
Yeah, so the podcast is called The Midlife Career Rebel. And it really is designed to provide inspiration, tools, strategies, resources to help people to really get into the driver's seat of their career. And so we love to just share mindset strategies and actual tools and just different ways of thinking about how to approach your career so that you can create the legacy that I'm sure you want to create, make the impact that you want to make. But most importantly, to put you in control of where you want to go in your career.
Love this. Well, Carol, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming to my podcast. This has been invaluable. And I know a lot of people have been taking notes, and I know a lot of people will be reaching out to you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Victoria. This has been such an amazing conversation. And, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
I hope you loved this interview as much as I did. Carol is amazing at what she does, and I'm so happy she was able to come to my show and share her wisdom with us. Definitely check out her Midlife Career Rebel podcast, as it will be truly transformational for you. And speaking about transformations, make sure to grab my free mini course called Conquer Your Fear of Public Speaking from Within. In this training, I'm going to teach you why you haven't conquered your fear of public speaking yet and what you should start doing instead. If you are a high-level professional entrepreneur who has been struggling with the fear of public speaking, then this mini course is for you. You can get it at www.conqueryourfearminicourse.com. It's all one word, www.conqueryourfearminicourse.com. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Bye for now.